which is Vilfredo Pareto, which is basically he's who's considered the main contributor from new welfare economics, not the old one. He added more to it, which is what we use more of nowadays. And he was born in 1848 and died in 1923. He was a Parisian economist, and he was also an economic professor. He wrote books about how the government should have a bit more democracy, and how I mentioned before, he was focused on how people should be winning more money in order to be more happy and promote social well-being. He's also known for the 80-20 rule, which means 20% of the population owns 80% of the land. Um, he's also known for the indifference curve, which we'll talk more about.
Just
Um,
please come back.
oh,
Just quickly, something else that I have to mention to you because it's important. Here with Pareto, come back please to the previous one. Here, question in your last quiz, what is the indifference cure? It's a cure that will show combinations of two goods because of the model where I will have the same level of satisfaction. This is the theory behind the demand cure. This is a typical question later for you in your exam in microeconomics. Could be a question here in your class about introduction to economic science. Don't forget that. Actually, it's coming before Vilfredo Pareto. Probably you will mention that later, but the most important contribution by Pareto is the optimum of Pareto. Because in the end, one definition that we mentioned at the very beginning is that economics is a science to optimize these resources that are scarce because we have unlimited needs. And how do you know when you're optimizing? Well, one of the first rules by Pareto is, there should be a condition where you cannot increase the level of satisfaction of one individual without affecting a second one. If you arrive to this allocation of resources, you are in this Pareto optimum. Sorry, guys, go ahead.
it's called Pareto optimality, which basically describes a situation, as the teacher was saying, where no further improvements to society's well-being can be made through a reallocation of resources that makes at least one person better off, but then makes the other person worse than they were before. And
okay, let me interrupt you because you can read the definition here. Probably something that you need to remember. But in my opinion, only a few of you actually are understanding what that means. Therefore, let me try to use an example to get the idea because it's highly important. Who's sharing? Who has the open microphone? Victor. Yeah, Victor.
Yeah.
Do you like apples, manzanas?
Yeah.
Now, the example and the model he's using is starting with something very simple, as usually in the neoclassical school. Yeah, we had two individuals, so we had Victor and me, and we had two goods, but actually it's two apples. And the question is, how can you optimize the allocation of these two apples between these two individuals? Well, that is the root. If you can rearrange who has the apples and you're improving one of these two individuals without affecting the second individual, you're optimizing. And now we have two individuals and two apples. How do we allocate that? Most probably you are thinking one apple for Victor, one apple for me, right? And let me tell you something. I don't like apples at all. And because I don't like apples at all, you can say, come in, we can take the apple from Professor and give the apple to Victor, and we are increasing the level of satisfaction of one of these two individuals without affecting a second one. You are optimizing in the sense of Pareto. When Victor has two apples and I have no apple at all because I don't like, you are getting this Pareto optimality. Do you agree? I have 0 and Victor 2. Now, by contrast, let's think that actually I like apples. But we're starting, because nobody mentioned how we're starting this, and we're starting this with Victor with 2 apples, and I like apples this time. Can you take one apple from Victor to give me the apple to me? Well, you can do it, but will not be optimal. Why? Because Victor likes apples. You are taking that apple from Victor to give that apple to me, and Victor is not improving. By contrast, and therefore will not be optimal according with Pareto. Therefore, this is an optimal rule. Nobody mentioned that it was fair. Puede ser injusto. And the question is, who is deciding how we are starting the distribution of goods? Many already had a lot. As I mentioned, yeah, since that 20% of population has almost 80% everything. What about the other 80% or only with 20%? Sorry, guys, you know that according with the markets and this idea by Pareto Optimo, we cannot improve the allocation of resources, because when we're taking something from these guys with everything, we had a negative impact on these guys. Tell me, Fernando, what's your question?
It was like the beginnings of the socialist way of thinking.
Right, because we need to be thinking about.
Like it started from those philosophers or economists.
He has a key contribution, because about the well-being, actually, Adam Smith mentioned that at the very beginning. He was thinking that there is an invisible hand. You are selfish. Because you are selfish, you go to the market, a market of perfect competition, and as a result, the allocation of resources with this market is the best, not only for you, but also for your society. When that is not true, because markets are not always market of perfect competition, we can see that few individuals has almost everything, and a lot of individuals has almost nothing. But if you want to optimize the allocation of resources, first tell me what that means. How can I optimize? And one rule in economics is by this guy that is still worth using, the Pareto optimality. And the example that I mentioned is just like that. It's the basic model, very simple to understand. Yeah? But the major conclusion here is, nobody was talking, nobody mentioned that when you had an optimum according with Pareto, actually that is a fair result. Es un resultado justo. Nobody mentioned that.